You're looking good, and it feels good to be with you today. Hello, I'm Kendall Bryan Hunter, and I'm author of this book. Take a look at it. You'll feel great when you buy it. Consider My Servant Job. It's a spiritual biblical commentary on the book of Job in the Old Testament. We're all going through trials right now, and in fact, I was originally going to talk. This is the Eyes of Faith podcast, and I was originally going to talk about Sidney Sweeney, Hitler, and pink elephants. Apparently, Sidney Sweeney's part of some sort of eugenics experiment about racial purity or so. I was looking at my 401k. It's lost about $6,000. Yeah, my crypto wallet's really shrinking. So I'm talking about a financial SOS today. That's where it really needs. So welcome, you who are 3 steps above average. And let's start talking about the financial SOS right now. About Sidney Sweeney. So you have an attractive woman selling jeans. Well, apparently there's some sort of neo-Nazi eugenics conspiracy behind it all. That's a good example of the pink elephants. The pink elephants that the left sees. They see it, they get this weird emotional response, and their brain scrambles. Okay, what does this emotion mean? Well, there's some sort of neo-Nazi plot against, us people with blue eyes, the blue-eyed devils, us. And it's just imagining things, catastrophizing. Really what behind it all, there's just a lot of envy behind the way she looks. Of course, Sidney Sweeney has beauty bias because she's physically attractive, and people are envious of the way she looks. Okay, that's why you have the gospel of Jesus Christ to get us off all that silly stuff. So I'm talking a little bit about personal finance, microeconomics. Just my background, I have a Bachelor of Arts in History. My minor is in political science. I'm not an economist. I don't do mathematics. I'm a guy on social media. You're the ones who are 3 steps above average, so you should be able to pick out. I'm just sharing some information with you, and Merry Christmas. So here's my personal finance basics. Get on a budget, get out of debt, and don't do drugs. Getting on a budget, I explained how you start is just get an envelope like this, just any envelope, and you put all your receipts in this envelope. Then after a month, you take the envelope out and you categorize what you're spending. What a budget is it tracks your spending. It's a proactive way of managing your money, and you do it by tracking your spending. Go online and find some type of budget. This is a book called Richard Paul Evans, 5 Lessons a Millionaire Taught Me About Life and Wealth. The Christmas box guy, ho, ho, ho. And this is one that he has in the back of the book. You can probably find some of these old PDFs that are a little bit larger. So this is a thing, and you have the categories in there, and just food. Okay, what's food? What's spending? What's a Christmas gift? You can. I don't know if you knew this, but you can actually plan ahead for Christmas gifts. What you do right now is November, and you buy what's called a 12-month certificate of deposit. So you put a hunk of money in there and just let it cook, kind of like a crock pot. Just let it cook for an entire year. So a year from now, you'll have a lot of money. You'll get the money back plus interest. And you do it again. Just create this cycle where you're just collecting money and collecting interest. That's how rich people think. Also, point is to do what's called a net worth sheet. This is also from Richard Paul Evans. You need to know how much money you have, where it comes from, where it's going, and what it's doing. So you get this money. If it's cooking in a certificate of deposit account, that's great. Lean times are coming. You need to get. This is a chance to reinvent yourself. So, get on a budget, get out of debt. The debt snowball. I explained that. You can see videos on. If I'm not explaining it clearly, watch 5 other videos. And different people explaining the same thing will help you, because I'm not going to be this egotistical podcaster claiming that I know everything. If I'm not working, someone else may work. I'm concerned about people not having anxiety. So this is the debt snowball. You line up all your debts, start with the smallest one. You have the largest one last. You pay off the smallest one. Let's say it's $200 each month. You take your $200, add it to this one. So you do minimum payments on all these. As this one done, it collapses. You go to this one, you move to this one, you'll pay it off really quickly. Don't do drugs. Don't get in these bad habits. Don't buy glow-in-the-dark Frisbees on eBay. Yeah, I like looking at these old Star Wars action figures I had as a kid, but I'm not putting money into those. If I have spare money, it's going into a growth index fund in the stock market. I'm in my 50s. That is how a 50-year-old person thinks. That is how a rich man thinks. Okay? Think like a rich woman. How would a rich person handle their money? Let me pause for a second. I'm back. What it is, you got to do something, because you look at the way the inflation is going, and we can't keep on counting on government checks to get us by. They tried that in the Soviet Union. I was just in Russia 6 months after the Soviet Union broke up. It don't work. So 3 points: get out of budget, get out of debt, don't do drugs. And here's some books I recommend. I showed this one, The 5 Lessons a Millionaire Taught Me About Life and Wealth by Richard Paul Evans. The Christmas box guy. Merry Christmas. Repeating the joke. Richest Man in Babylon. Dave Ramsey has a version of this, but it's public domain now, but some version of this have different covers and different copies. That's what I use. They have these rules in there on how to handle money, so it's accessible. You can read it. Get your Dave Ramsey baby steps out and follow it very precisely. There's a logical sequence to these things. Follow this plan and you'll get out of debt. I followed it and I'm debt-free. So, this is the time to reinvent yourself. Don't lose your head. Don't go into a headless chicken mode right now. Get these books. Follow the principles. Pay off your credit card. Eliminate all your debt. Pay off your student loans. Yeah, you can pay off your student loans. I did. Because I made a promise I'd pay back these loans, and I kept my promise. Greatest blessing of my life, because it taught me discipline. So that's your financial SOS, or whatever I'm calling this. Change it at the last minute. So news blips. Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They announced no more evening session. Well, this has been coming for a couple of years now. Back in June 7th, 2021, they announced it, and then people were clamoring about it. It's interesting. Some of the arguments were that they're going to hear fewer women speakers. So back July 27th, so about almost 2 months later, month and 3 quarters later, they said, okay, we'll have the Saturday session, but you realize they've been doing it a half session. It hasn't been as long as the full session. So finally, President Oaks, our prophet, November 19th, 2025, said, okay, yeah, we're finally eliminating it. This is consistent with home-centered church. Okay, some people show up to church just to socialize, to hang out. That's a nice secondary effect, but that's not why you go there. Some of the bean counters were complaining about gender equity quotas. You go to conference not to hear a man speak or to hear a woman speak. You go to conference to hear Christ speak. Sister return age. They can finally leave at 18. I always thought it was funny, the age, because I'm part of the age where we left at... Men left at 19, came back at 21, and just as we're coming back, the girls are leaving at 21, come back at 22. So it's a 4.5 year gap. That did not make any sense. What I was thinking of is that thought process was called systems analyst, systems analytics, as being a systems analyst. Okay, well, how's the system functioning? Let's add that to your skill set. Can you think like a systems analyst? What's the whole process going on like? I like how it's tied with opening up the endowment to younger people. I think it was Elder Yagi talked about it at this last conference, that younger people getting endowed actually keeps them in the church. I'm part of the age group where we went on more camping trips and temple trips, even though I lived 15 minutes away from the Oakland Temple. There's real transportation. I would have loved to have been endowed. I'm part of the demographic where sometimes you get sisters graduate from college who weren't endowed. That's no longer going to be a problem now. The other thing that's, I think, kind of the holdout right now is elders being ordained high priest. I got ordained high priest when I was in my mid-40s. That was not a good process. I was attending the high priest group. I had a ministering assignment to high priest, showing up there, doing everything except being ordained a high priest. That didn't make any sense. Like having the elders come back at 21, the sisters leaving at 21. That doesn't make sense. You can talk about coveting callings all you want, but that's one component of the question. What's best for the individual? Okay, another news blip. Trump and Zamdami met. So Trump thinks Zamdami is a communist, and Zamdami thinks Trump's a fascist. So if Trump was a fascist, why wasn't Zamdami disappeared? How did he win the election? Os Desaparecidos, Sting, They Dance Alone. Once again, this pink elephant. You'll attach this label, get a Post-it note, scrawl an insult, and just tap to President Trump's head, then pat yourself on the back. Pink elephants. What's going on? Trump knows how to negotiate. You bluster when you get in there. You talk turkey. Of course, Zamdami's policies have fallen to a T. Of course, will collapse the system. It just happens all the time. That's how reality functions. The question isn't how you feel or what you want, but how does reality function? Epstein files. The Epstein files. Like Obamacare, Congress releasing the Epstein files shows you they can act really quickly when they want. So how about those $2,000 checks? Marjorie Taylor Greene resigns from Congress. Congress again. Moving on. So, Greg Laurie, he was a evangelical pastor, spoke at BYU, or at UVU, I should say, and it clearly was in the context of the death of Charlie Kirk. Now, if you're a saint, listening to him would have been 10 steps backwards and 3 steps sideways, just on doctrinal reasons. Yeah, the doctrine does make a difference. I'll talk about this a little bit later about non-denominational churches. But it was 100% perfect for the community. He was very respectful. He was playful. He knew how to work a crowd. He told a coffee joke. And he was very effective. So nothing he said was offending me or rude. So Greg Laurie, thank you for coming here. I'm glad you came here. And in fact, before he came here, I actually got a copy. It's called a New Believer's Bible with notes by Greg Laurie, New Living Translation. This is interesting. Greg Laurie, he only has a high school education, but he runs this global organization. Someone with a high school education kind of wrote these notes. All of us are sinners. They're at the bottom. Perseverance produces results. And let me see if I can find that. And these wrote the introductory notes to these chapters in the Bible. So New Living, that's kind of an easy, it's almost a paraphrase translation. But giving out for free, I got it. And just more as a token of gratitude for him coming there. I thought it was a very good experience for everyone involved. So, Crusades. It was called Harvest Crusade, Hope for America. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. You have the expression crusade. That, of course, has some baggage with it. I have a degree in history, as I mentioned. I served my mission in Portugal. I've read the Quran 4 times. English translations, of course, I don't speak Arabic. Didn't serve my mission there, served in Portugal. So I'm sensitive to the expression of a crusade and historical baggage behind it. There's this organization called Campus Crusade for Christ. Perfect alliteration, or perfect consonation. Campus Crusade for Christ. And I think it was in the 90s, they rebranded themselves Cru. They had to call themselves something. It was part of it was the sensitivity to the expression crusade, but also they've expanded beyond just being a campus ministry. So for members of the church, 10 steps backwards, 3 steps sideways. But for a culture addicted to cell phones, this is really good stuff. Same thing with Joel Osteen. For a culture addicted to cell phones and having anxiety and depression, Joel Osteen is really great for that. So that's offensive to Wahhabists, but your Muslim friends and neighbors, ones that you work with or ride on the bus with, the ones that I went to school with, they're not offended by it. They understand it, but it's just not something in their consciousness. It's sort of these agitators in social media make that an issue. So you called it Harvest Crusade, Hope for America. And you have this interesting issue. equating Christianity with Americanism and with political conservatism. What happened like during World War I and World War II, there's a big push, and this, of course, came from the government, of promoting Americanism. The expression 100% Americanism came up was associated with World War I. Certainly you have people like James Dobson and Jerry Falwell. James Dobson with Focus on the Family, Jerry Falwell with Moral Majority, who are politically active. Keep in mind the Family Proclamation talks about being politically active. Certainly as citizens we have a right with it. It's interesting too is there's this video around of Charlie Kirk where he talks about, he has these beliefs that are based on the Bible, but he can prove them secularly. You can track it down. It's been going around from his Focus or New Beginnings, or I can't remember. I'm drawing a blank on his organization. I didn't follow him. I wasn't part of the demographic. I like what he did, though. So people equate Christianity with Americanism, conservatism. In fact, in the book, this book here, Letter to a Christian Nation by Sam Harris, recommend it. I recommend this. This gives you a perspective, his point of view. What's Sam Harris talking about? This new atheist movement that came to power in the arose during the 1990s, 2000. And he has a sentence. It's page IX, or 9 in Roman numerals. He says, "I have little doubt that liberals and moderates find the eerie certainties of the Christian right as troubling as I do." So he's equating atheism with liberalism, and then Christian right with faith in Jesus Christ. Now, there's a reason why atheists would tend to be politically liberal, and it has to do with egalitarianism. That with egalitarianism, everyone's on the same level, but certainly you have a God who's above people, and that's an offensive thing. If everyone's egalitarian, then you can't have a God. You can't have a clergy. You can't have the elect or a chosen people. When's the last time you heard a general conference talk on the elect, even though it's a doctrine of the church? C.S. Lewis, it was something that C.S. Lewis was sensitive to. I don't know if you knew this, but Winston Churchill offered C.S. Lewis knighthood. And this is the letter he wrote back to his office. And you kind of understand is that you're just dealing with secretaries, you're not dealing with the person. Winston Churchill didn't read all of his mail, but we have a copy of the letter he sent. And C.S. Lewis said, "I feel greatly obliged to the Prime Minister, and so far as my personal feelings are concerned, this honor would be highly agreeable. There are, however, knaves who say, and fools who believe, that my religious writings are all covert anti-leftist propaganda. My appearance on the honors list would, of course, strengthen their hands. It is therefore better that I should not appear there. I'm sure the Prime Minister will understand my reasoning, that my gratitude will be nonetheless cordial." Okay, first of all, that's a masterclass on how to politely decline something. He's being, it's sort of the what's that? Was it 2-minute manager? Compliment, concern, compliment, where he sandwiches in there. Very good. And he's speaking in the context of 1 Corinthians chapter 8 and the meat offered to idols. There's nothing wrong with him becoming a knight, Sir C.S. Lewis, but it was the appearance issue, the question of, always institutional religion getting equated with political right, the political left, who are egalitarian, not liking religion. So that's a sensitive issue. That what he's doing when Greg Laurie's calling this Hope for America, is he limiting it? I mean, America didn't even exist 2,000 years ago, and it's really not part of Christ's message. But I'll get to that. But is there a double standard? For example, on the left, you have the Reverend how did Rush Limbaugh say it? The Reverend Jackson. When Rush Limbaugh did it, he was making fun of William F. Buckley. You can find this on the internet. Is when Jesse Jackson was younger, he went on William F. Buckley's show, and William F. Buckley had this unusual way of talking. The Reverend Jackson. Then you have Reverend Al Sharpton. Reverend Jackson, Reverend Sharpton on the left, but that's okay. But when the right does it, there's a separation of church and state. Here I'll get into some sensitive area. Reverend Martin Luther King. Although Martin Luther King, he was really apolitical. He was just focusing on civil rights. He wasn't doing specific, policies on welfare and such. It was more of civil rights. So I'd classify him as being apolitical. But certainly with Reverend Jackson and Sharpton, yeah, that's partisan. Is there a double standard? America had slavery and they oppressed the Native Americans, but in compared to what? I served my mission in Portugal. I served in the city is called Evora, Evora, Evora. So I don't know what the city's original name was, but you had the indigenous Celts there. And then when Julius Caesar came there, he changed the name of the city, or called the city Pax Julia, where he signed a treaty with the Lusii Celts, Lusii. That's where you get Lusitania from. And then later it was, oh no, this is not Evros Beige, excuse me. It's called Pax Julia. Then the Arabs called it Al-Baja when the Arabs came in. So you had the Celts, the Romans, and the Muslims came in, the Arabic Muslims, called it Al-Baja. Then after that, it was just known as Beja, which is sort of carries the Arabic history, but it is still a sufficiently different name. So you have three names for the cities. Now here's the eyes of faith perspective. America is part of God's plan. And you read that in the Book of Mormon and the Doctrine and Covenants. In fact, a long time ago with America's bicentennial in 1976, we're celebrating the semi-quincentennial, or 250 years. That's a semi-quincentennial is a sesquipedalian word. But Marky Peterson, a member of the Quorum of the 12, wrote a book called The Great Prologue, where he talks about the beginnings before America was founded. They had this before you have the Restoration, you have this prologue leading up to it. Conditions changing, the Reformation, the Age of Discoveries and such. And give that book a read. It's out of print. You can totally find it in a used bookstore. I have a copy of it that was bicentennial commemorative. I'm actually old enough to remember the bicentennial back in 1976, the bicentennial quarters. Really a sense of invigorating America, especially after Vietnam and Watergate and the assassinations of JFK, RFK, and MLK. Give it a look, give it a read, study the doctrine, see if there's a double standard. Talk to your lawyer about church and state, if we're understanding that correctly. You may not be understanding the legal term. You have this popularized version of it that may not be accurate. So I mentioned earlier, non-denominational churches. Greg Laurie, he's what's called a parachurch ministry. So he has a certain thing he's coming from, which is he's on Moody Bible, which is Southern Baptist, of the Moody Bible Institute. But there's a shift now to non-denominational churches away from the thing. Now, if you remember Joseph Smith, leading up to the first vision, you had these groups, the Methodists, the Presbyterians, and Baptists had a group camp meeting. So, okay, we come to Christ, but you have to have the denomination question. So which denomination should you join? And one of the preachers, one of Joseph Smith's mentors, read James 1:5, which led Joseph Smith there. That was really the question he had with the first vision. It was one of denominations. Okay, which of these? We know that Christianity is true, but which of denominations is correct? Because they're all saying they're Bible churches, but they're teaching different things. It's interesting because in Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis avoids that question. In fact, Peter Kraft makes the proposition that C.S. Lewis created a new religion called Merism. It's a specific set of doctrines. Mere Christianity is sort of a general Christianity book. John Stott wrote this book called Basic Christianity. I recommend reading both. It's interesting how John Stott's book doesn't include theosis. But this move away from denominationalism is interesting because denominations aren't as potent as they were, or as compelling. For example, they have these places called Bible churches. And what that is, it's just a non-denominational church and they read the Bible. But isn't that what Martin Luther said he was doing? He's just reading the Bible and starting the church up. So it's an interesting thing. Protestant churches become just a social mosh pit. The church has become a social mosh pit. That's an interesting shift. And is it creeping into our church? For example, when you read conference talks quoting C.S. Lewis or Martin Luther, is that a bit of a problem? You also see this with members who leave our church and then they join other denominations. That always puzzled me. It's like, well, these denominations believe really different things. And what they believe, for example, when you join this church, you're losing your patriarchal blessing, the endowment, work for the dead, priesthood keys, the Book of Mormon, doctrines from the second anointing to a gathering of Zion. You're losing a lot of stuff, but you're just socially interacting with people. So you get I think it's interesting because it's more about a social circle rather than beliefs and how you have doctrine divides. So that's an interesting trend in the world. Sort of you're seeing this beige ecumenism, ecumenical ecumenism. We're just kind of believing vague things, and the doctrine doesn't matter. Just the social interaction and social gospel. That's an interesting trend. So we're at 26 minutes. I've talked a whole lot. Here's the Life Some Pointers section of the podcast. Here's a pointer. Get a toolkit. And let me see that? All those tools handy. Of course, some things just may be beyond your capacity or skill, but certainly tightening a screw shouldn't be one of them. Changing a light bulb. Have a tool handy. Back when I was a kid, you'd have the Time Life books on how home repairs. My dad was smart enough; he never needed one of these things. But that's actually a merit badge I got called Home Repairs, I think what it was called. Nowadays, you just watch YouTube videos. And here's another pointer. When you're trying to figure out how to repair something, watch at least 3 different videos before. Just don't watch one, watch 3 to give you more perspective. Here's another pointer. Thanksgiving's coming up, which is why I'm wearing the Christmas hat. You have one of those. But go to the Genio website. They do turkey. They'll give you tips on how to cook turkey. You use these websites to help you out. That just don't fly in there blind or go off of what you learned on your mission or what your neighbor does. You can invest a little bit of time. Once you cut back wasting your time on social media, but actually using the internet with an intended purpose, it'll make a big difference. Here we are, 27 minutes, and I'll like to conclude with this. This is Ronald Reagan's Thanksgiving Proclamation from 1982. It goes back to what I was saying with, is America, the relation between America and Christianity? Are we politicizing religion? Are we religiousizing politics? Is there something distinct? Is there a difference between manifest destiny and divine providence? This is what Reagan said. He's talking about divine providence. I've always believed that this anointed land was set apart in an uncommon way, that the divine plan placed this great continent here between the oceans to be found by people from every corner of the earth who had a special love of faith and freedom. Our pioneers asked that he would work that he would work in his will in our daily lives, so America would be a land of morality, fairness, and freedom. That's just not him. Federalists too. If you read Common Sense by Thomas Paine, they talked about that. How you just look at it, America, United States of America, it's separated. It's in the middle of the ocean. The United States of America, even parts of Canada, the farmland's just at a right area. Kansas, Nebraska, Montana, they're really great for growing stuff because you look at the same area, the same band of latitude in the southern hemisphere. It's just all Rocky Mountains, and it's not plains. It's not good for farming. Yeah, we are blessed, and it's a stewardship and something we're certainly grateful for, thankful for, to use a word, but also carries a burden. Oh, see, I'm about ready to finish this. I was talking about how God blesses America, and I get this potential spam. So I hung up on them because you're 3 steps above average. But be grateful for America. America is not a ink blot test where it's just for anything and you just do whatever you want. America certainly has changed since I was a kid, and not for the better. But there's always hope for renewal, and you can be part of that renewal. Keep the memory of Charlie Kirk alive. Even if you're a Democrat, you can still speak out for free speech and free expression of ideas. So, happy Thanksgiving. That's the passing scene. Seen with the eyes of faith.